Excited to be here. Let me click this. Got it. Okay. And I am going to share for about 20 minutes, and then I do have to hop off. So I will pass the baton to Jessica, who's on our a team member with the Pearl Project. I am in Jacksonville right now, and she's in Sarasota. So you got to love Zoom. And we're both originally, I mean, I'm not originally from Ocala, but we met in Ocala. So she was working with us there before she moved to Sarasota. But I'm going to share my screen if y'all are okay with that. I know it's informal, but if you're like me, I am visual. I like to see pictures. So I thought it might be fun for you to see a few of our pictures, some just help to explain who we are and what we do. But this, I've created the Pearl Project, and as most nonprofits it begins with my personal story. So that's what I'm going to share with you today, and just kind of why we needed to create this organization. And so it starts with my family. About 10 years ago, my husband and I decided to become foster parents because we really thought we were good parents. We had 3 biological children, and we really love parenting. So we were like, we're pretty good at this. We really like doing it. There's a need for good foster homes. So let's just do it. We should do this. And our thought was that we would foster forever. Like, we didn't think that was our plan. And so we weren't planning to adopt or anything like that. And I call these 2 my bookends. This is my oldest and my youngest. So this is our first foster baby. And he came to us at 2 months old. He was born 2 months early. So right around his due date, he came to us, and he had suffered more trauma in his little life than most of us will have in a lifetime. He was born with multiple substances, including alcohol. When he came to us, he had a skull fracture, and so he immediately went into foster care. And so in another foster home, he suffered a skull fracture and broken ribs. In this picture, he was still healing from those injuries. And he also had an incident where he had acid reflux, and he was left alone by the foster mom, just propped up, and the mom was like taking a nap, and he was choking because he had this acid reflux, and he had a choking incident. And when she saw him, his lips were turning blue. He was, choking. He wasn't breathing. She brought him to the emergency room, and his body temperature was 86 degrees. So to warm them up, they put a heating blanket on him, and the heating element touched his foot. So while he's in the hospital, he suffered a 3rd-degree burn on his foot. So he came to us healing from these broken bones with a little booty on his foot. And we began the work of helping him heal. And as you can see, he was well loved. We held him all the time. And within a couple of weeks, he started to show signs of healing. I would take him to get his bone scan. They were healing. He was plumping up. He was looking healthier. And we were like, it felt really good. Because we're like, wow, this feels good. We're helping him heal. I'm so glad he won't remember this. That was one of my big thoughts, was he's too little to remember this. But what I didn't know then was the long-term impact of trauma on anybody, really, especially the young children. And so, and I'm going to go to it. And okay, yeah, fast forward. I wasn't sure what the next slide was. Fast forward a few months, and we were asked to adopt him and his older sister. So you can see, so I have my 3 bios there, and then the 2 little ones are my the ones that we adopted through foster care. And again, we really love parenting. And so we thought, well, you can see we outnumber them. There's more of us. We should be able to handle taking in 2 young kids when we are pretty good parents, right? So we began this journey with these 2 kiddos who had both experienced a lot of trauma. I told you what my son experienced. My daughter's was a little different. She was also born with multiple substances at birth, tested positive for a lot of different drugs, was immediately put in foster care. And she was put in the kind of foster home you hear about, that it's more of like a paycheck. She didn't know what it was like to be in a family. So when she came to us, she didn't even know her name at 2 years old. We would say her name and she wouldn't respond to it. She thought that every woman was mom. So all my friends were mom. Just a woman is mom, because she didn't know what a healthy attachment was. And so that we had a lot of challenges with these two because of their histories. And I have another, yes, I always have to share on this when I talk, because it's, most people haven't heard of it, but so most of you probably know about fetal alcohol syndrome, but do any of you know about FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? Have you heard of that? So fetal alcohol syndrome is one diagnosis under the FASD umbrella. So FASD is a broad umbrella, and then there's these different diagnoses under it. So it's a spectrum. And my son has since been diagnosed with FASD. And it is thought to be one of the most common developmental disability in the world. But most of us, again, I didn't know about it. He was in our house for several years before we had this diagnosis. But it's thought that up to 5% of the population have it. So you probably know somebody with an FASD, but they may not even know it, right? So this is just that when there's exposure to alcohol in the womb, this is the diagnosis that kids get. And it's thought to be more common than autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and Tourette syndrome combined. So it's like very common, but, and we call it an invisible disability because you don't necessarily see, like, there aren't necessarily facial features. Like with fetal alcohol syndrome, there's definitely a look, and we know that when kids have it, you can kind of tell. But FASD, what my son has, which is one of those disorders under there, it's called neurobehavioral disorder, but I always tell people it translates to hard behavior. He struggles with impulse control, cause and effect thinking, lack of executive functioning. And if you think about it, if 5% of the population, or they estimate 1 in 20 school-age children have an FASD, our teachers need to know about this. So they need to know that there are kids in their classrooms who have this invisible disability that are struggling, and we think they're just being naughty, but really it's actual brain damage that happens with these kids, that their brains really struggle to do these things that we expect kids to be able to do. So I always have to talk about that because I'm so passionate about getting the word out, since most people don't know about it. But because of having an FASD and all his early trauma, we saw some really hard behaviors. We saw before he was even 2, he would have these hour-long rages. They were so intense. We called them wobblers, more intense than a typical toddler fit. Like, we knew something was up, like this is not normal. And we, even with them being younger than us and there being more of us, we felt completely overwhelmed. Because remember, again, we went into this because we thought, oh, we're such good parents, we can do this. You know, we have these 3 amazing kids. We love parenting. It's so fun. But then once we got into it, we felt like we felt so ill-equipped, so alone. We didn't know how to help our kids. And so it was in that stage of parenting or that part of our journey that I was honestly didn't know how we were going to keep going. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to keep these kids. And it was just really, really hard. And we discovered at that lowest point, we discovered something called trust-based relational intervention, or TBRI. And it totally transformed how I view my kids, how I view every relationship. And it gave us tools to help our kids. And the biggest thing that it taught me was about the impact of early trauma. Because remember, I thought, well, he won't remember this, right? Like, he was so little, he has no memories that these things happen. But it taught me that no, trauma will impact, especially the earlier they experience it, it's going to have long-term impacts on children. And so I learned about those impacts, and then I learned how to help my kids. And the best thing I learned through TBRI was to ask the question, what does this baby need? Whether it's my actual baby in my arms, or like toddlers or my teenagers that are taller than me. What does this baby need, and learning how to meet needs. And so I'm just going to show you a little bit more of, I can't go to the next slide. There we go. A little more of like going into a little more of what we learn in TBRI, these are when I talk about the impacts of trauma, the 5 B's of trauma. So trauma impacts the body, the brain, biology, beliefs, and behavior. So our kids with trauma have more sensory issues. They're going to have a lot. I think the general population, Jessica, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it's like 15% of the population might have sensory processing disorder. In our kids who have trauma, it's like 85% of kids have sensory processing disorders. So a lot of the hard behaviors we see might be related to a sensory issue. I learned that there are physiological changes in the body when there's trauma. Children who are born exposed to substances often don't have the sensation of feeling full. And so they eat all the time. They seem to eat all the time. You're like, why are you eating? But it's because they've got, they don't necessarily, their brain isn't sending that signal of what it feels like to be full. They have an overactive fight, flight, freeze response. So they will go into that fight mode and that survival mode really quickly. I learned, if I told you what my son had gone through, all those experiences, when his brain was developing, it was like his little, we taught, and one of the things we teach our family is the hand model of the brain. And so like we teach kids this too, that your hand, if you take your hand and do this is your brain, and you got your brain stem here, and you come up around, and right here's where you have logic and language and all those good things like creativity. And this is called our upstairs brain, or our prefrontal cortex. And then if you take your fingers and lift them up, right there, you got your thumbnail. This is going to represent our amygdala, which is that switch that puts us into survival mode or fight, flight, freeze. And so what I learned, and we need this part of our brain, right? It's what keeps us alive when there's a threat. But I learned that kids who have early trauma, it's like this part of their brain, their amygdala, was lifting weights, and it gets bigger it's overactive. So that explained to me why my son could like flip his lid and like stay there for so long. And just knowing that, thinking in terms of, his lid is flipped. That's why. And then I learned through TBRI to pay attention to my own brain, because we have a brain, our kids have a brain. And what happens when they flip their lid? What happens with us? Sometimes we often causes us to flip our lid. So I learned that nothing's going to help whenever he gets upset, and then I go right there too. So I had to like learn a lot of ways to keep my brain online so that he could come down and bring his brain down. And so these are the kind of things I learned through TBRI. It's just the impact of trauma. I learned that trauma impacts the biology. There was a study. One of my favorite things I learned was that there's a study on male rats where they exposed them to a sweet chemical smell. I think it was like cherry blossom smell. And they gave them an electric shock when they exposed them to the smell. And as you can imagine, the rats became afraid of that smell, right? Because every time they would smell it, they would get this electrical shock. So not surprising that after they would start to just expose them to the smell without the shock, and they would have a fear response, a lot of cortisol and all those things. The thing that was interesting about this study is they took those male rats, and when they had pups, they separated them. They were never around their daddies. And they exposed their little baby rats to the same smell without an electrical shock, and they had a fear response. So it's like they were wired to be afraid of that smell. And then they went down a generation from there and did not expose those rats to shock either, and they were still afraid of that smell. And what that taught me is that when we welcomed children into our home that had trauma, we weren't just welcoming their trauma, we were welcoming their parents and their grandparents. It's generational. And so there were a lot of, that was eye-opening to me of kind of the path we were on. And also trauma, I learned it impacts their belief system. They struggle, especially my daughter, with not knowing her name at age 2, not knowing what a mom was. She really struggles and still struggles with her self-worth and self-esteem. But those are all things like we don't really think about: body, brain, biology, beliefs. We tend to focus on the behavior. Like we see the behavior. We see the heart. I saw those wobblers that my son would have. I saw those intense rages. But so through TBRI, I learned to not just look at that behavior, but to think about what's going on underneath that. What are the needs behind that behavior, like in his body or his brain, in his beliefs? Like, how do I meet that need? What does this baby need? And so from that, once we had that, it gave me hope. It wasn't a magic bullet. It was not overnight. But once we had that change in how we saw our kids, and we had some tools to help them and learned how to meet needs, I couldn't keep it to myself. So we decided to share it with others. And we became a 501c3 called the Pearl Project, named it that because pearls start from a hard place, a vulnerable place, just like our kiddos that we serve. And so we want to empower them and show them how beautiful, I don't know why the lights went out, and valuable they are. And so what we do through the Pearl Project is there they are. We educate through trauma-informed trainings. We encourage, I feel like trainings are really important, but they can't be the only thing we do. We have to give families support. So we have support groups so they don't feel alone. It's not enough to just know the information. Caregivers need to feel supported and be able to process their struggles. It's not an easy change to make in parenting, so they need to have somebody helping them walk through it. So that's what we do with the TBRI practitioner support. And we also helped start the NICU Cuddle Care program at Advent Health, where we cuddle substance-exposed newborns. And that was important to me because I couldn't do that for my 2 kids, but I wanted to have a connection with their histories. So I just became a squeaky wheel calling the hospital. Is there a cuddle program? We need a cuddle program. And it happened. We have a cuddle program now at Advent Health that we are a part of. We train the cuddlers for that program. And so we're giving those babies a better start in life. There are studies that show that cuddling babies who've been born substance exposed can cut their hospital stays in half. So it's pretty cool. So it's a beautiful program. And then we also we have a kid-to-kid foster closet. So if caregivers come, get a new placement and they don't have what they need, we meet them up at the closet and help them get diapers, clothes, shoes, whatever they need. And I see the closet as a kind of a doorway into our work. People hear about, I can get free diapers, I can get shoes, and they come in and they're like, here's a training, come to our training, come to our support group. And we kind of surround them after that point. And we, in addition to these 3 E's, educate, encourage, and equip, we've actually added a 4th E, engage. And because we want our families to get immersed in what we do and get experiences that really help them really transform the family. So we started a camp. This is a picture from camp last year. And Jessica will talk more on that in a minute, but these are kind of our numbers from last year. You can see that we have our growth. In 2021, we served 626. We've gone up to over 1,000 in 2022. You can see just the amount of time we spend with families there, and it's our passion to not just transform families, but communities. We want everyone who touches the life of a child to be trauma informed and know how to help our kids. The teachers, churches, everyone. I think everyone needs this. So that is one of our goals, is to get this to more people. This is one of the families that we helped recently. She said she had been looking for help for 9 years as a foster and adoptive mom. She heard about us in March, came to a training. There's a timeline here. Came to a training. She actually drove an hour and a half to come to our training. She started going to our support group. Her kids attended camp in July. In October, we have a retreat for moms so that she could get away and be loved on and get rest and renewal. And then she's moving forward. she wants to start her own TBRI school. Like, she's inspired to go take this to more people in her community. So it's pretty powerful to see that transformation. And you can see here, she says she's finally feels like she's found the answer of how to help her children and herself heal. So I am going to stop screen sharing real quick. But that's kind of, I don't know if you're like me, I like to see photos. So, but do y'all have any questions? I have a few more minutes and then I'm going to pass it to Jessica, but that's kind of who we are, what we do, and why we are. So.
How many people are you serving? And do you have a physical location where people are coming? Are you rotating? Are you like in the back of a truck? It's just a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So Jessica is she's our data specialist. So she may know more of the exact numbers, but we're up to about 1,200 people right now. That include, because we do online training. So we're reaching beyond Ocala. But I would say in Ocala, we serve about 50 to 60 families in our closet, and that's growing as the word gets out every year. You know, we have regulars who come, but it's growing. And then we have a healing homes program where we serve about 10 families really intensely every year, where they get to go through our training, but then we also have a program for caregivers called Making Sense of Your Worth, where we help caregivers work on their own stuff. Because I was talking about the brain thing, you know, how like we have these triggers, but we don't know why. And so we go deeper and help them work through like how can we work on our own stuff so that we're not triggered as easily. So they get to go through that program. And then our space is at Highlands Baptist Church that was given to us. We don't even none of us even go there when they gave us the space. And we're like, thank you. So that's amazing. We have that. We are looking at long-term, we have a vision to have our own space. We have a lot of dreams of what that would look like for families. So that's our goal. But for now, we're thankful to have that space. And we also meet in churches. So we'll do our camp at Central Christian Church. Our retreat was actually up in Santa Rosa Beach. It's gorgeous. And speaking of the Panhandle, we have organically grown. We have a chapter now in Niceville, Florida, and one that's kind of rising up in Winter Garden. So these are just through relationships of other people doing this work who we trust, and they're doing amazing work. And so now they have their own chapter up there. But do you have anything to add to that, Jessica?
To the question of like how many people we've served. So this last year, the total number of individual clients served doubled from the year before. So 2022, it was just like 2 or 3 people shy of 2,000. And that doesn't count all of the kids who are impacted. So when you have a parent who comes to a training or support group, we haven't historically kept a whole lot of track, just because it moves so much, how many kids. So we might have 1 or 2 people at support group, but if they've got 5 kids, then really we've impacted 7. So our official number that we can count is 2,000, but I'd say we're probably closer to 5 or 10,000 if you add in all of the kids and all of the people who are impacted by the people that we impact. It's really, really cool.
One more follow-up question. Does the foster care system and the judges, like everyone that's involved, in child protection, all those sorts of things, do they all know you guys and the work that you're doing?
We are getting more and more known. In fact, I get referrals it's almost becoming daily from like DCF, Kids Central. Like they know about us, they know about our work. So we do have a relationship with Kids Central. They currently do send, like caregivers get licensing hours for us, like our trainings, that can be counted towards their foster license hours. Not their initial to become licensed, but relicensing, I guess. Once they're a foster family, they need a certain number of hours every year. So our stuff counts for that, support group and training. And Kids Central will sponsor families. So they are involved in that way. They believe in it enough that they're paying for families to go through our trainings. I will say we want to be more like, there's room for definitely to get out there more, and funding for it too, because the demand is huge. Like I get these referrals from DCF, but there's not really like a way, there's not necessarily a way to pay for it. So figuring out how do we offer this to families without charging them anything or too much, but there's such a need. And yeah.
Okay. Looks like Debbie might have a question or someone has. Okay, Alice, maybe?
It's Alice. Hi. I just thank you, Manal, for inviting me to attend today. And I sure didn't know exactly what the topic was, but I want to tell you, as the mother of a boy who had fetal alcohol, what we called effect, not syndrome in those days. This is 1990. I adopted my son. He's full native, and he came, with drugs and alcohol. He was born with drugs and alcohol in his system. And it was a long, hard, lonely road without many resources. There was nothing through the public schools, and we tried things like neuro-linguistic programming, all kinds of tutoring, and really without much success, to be honest. And he still struggles. He's 32.
32.
And
I would
so
love
I'm just thrilled for you, and I'm appreciative of you. Thank you very much for your work.
we always, in a lot of ways, people don't really know unless you've lived, like, know how much this is, I feel like people can understand it's needed, but when you live it, it's hard to explain how hard it is. So I would love to connect with you more outside, like just hear more if you are willing to talk about your
I
story.
actually offer some coaching and things that may be very helpful in this context.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
We that's the fetal, that piece is a big part of how moving forward, that advocacy work for these kids, that's something we're passionate about. So and finding more supports for them. So yeah.
Did I catch that you do collect clothing or you don't?
We collect like new clothing. We used to say gently used, and now we say like new.
Debbie? Debbie.
It's all relative, right? And so we're like, we want it to be like, if you wouldn't put your child, in this, like, then don't give it to us, please, or don't send us things that are, with holes or, but if it's nice, then yes, we do collect clothing. We have even had shoe drives. The Appleton did a shoe drive for us pre-COVID where they are talking about doing it again, but where if you donated 2 new pairs shoes to us, they would give a year membership to the Appleton. So, and we're actually looking at something like that again. So just new is great, but we will take gently used, and diapers, but we're pretty good on diapers right now. So yeah.
So Joy, the guys at the prison, they keep asking me, so they want to be trained. I mean, if there's a way, and if you talk with your team, if it's not even you, but I'm telling you, that's that's a group. And I think it would really.
Yes, I love that. And I would, let's, and even while I'm with because I'm here at this training with the leaders of the people who get it out to the world. So I will let them know too, because there are certain ways that they've taken the curriculum to adapt to different communities. So to find out what they're already doing in prisons and how we can offer it in a way that's like really meaningful. But yes, I want to do it. And I
keep promising them, I'm going to tell her, we're going to get her. I could tell them.
Oh, I love that. That was one of my, the TEDx experience was amazing, but that was one of the highlights doing that. Great. So thank you. And I'm going to have to hop off. So I'm going to let Jessica take the rest.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Good luck. Jessica, we have a few questions for you also.
Sure.
If you want to talk about your event that's coming up, which I think most everyone, Alice is a nomad. Alice, if you're back in town, February 23rd, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you want to share, because I think everyone is planning on attending. And
sure. So we're really, really excited. So I'm in Sarasota, so I'm a little bit on the outside of the planning part of the event, but we're really, really excited about it. We're doing this Roaring 20s Gala to support the foster and adoptive families that we serve, so that we can continue to provide the support groups and the services that we need, and hopefully be able to provide more scholarships for families who can't afford to pay for things like camp, retreat, and trainings. So it's Roaring 20s Gala. It's going to be at the Riley Arts Center Black Box on Thursday, February 23rd. Super excited. We've got a lot of really great people coming, some really good story and testimony to share. And really, it's going to be a lot of fun. Get dressed up. who was it? Diane, you said you already got your outfit. Very exciting. And then, so you've all got your passwords to come in. There will be some casino games and the live brass band and mocktails. And the purpose of doing mocktails instead of actual cocktails is very intentional to show, you know, support for the FASD families that we serve, and also to show that we can really have a great time without having to fill people with alcohol. We can have a great
Yes,
time.
say it loud. You can have fun without drinking.
Yes, we can do it without drinking, and we aim to prove a point with that. Even, I mean, I have a glass of wine here and there, but this particular event is to prove a point that we can live a healthy life and happy and have a blast even without it. So we're super excited for that. There was a little bit of room for sponsorship left. If anybody is interested, just reach out to Joy at joy@thepearlproject.com. You can just email her and she can help you figure that out. Or if you have anyone else that really you think needs to be invited, Alice, I'm sad that you can't come, but if you know of other people that really need to hear what we're doing and you think would be in support, then just let us know. We've got a little bit of space left.
You know who we didn't necessarily think of, but I think all the school board members need to be there. Have we invited them? I when I created my invitation list, I didn't include anyone like that.
I'm not sure. Joy holds the list.
Yeah, so I might
I've
reach out to her.
I've not looked back through it in a bit, but I think that would be a really great idea. I
Yeah,
think
I think they need to also, the school system needs to know what you guys are doing. So
that's kind of it. The school system kind of training and understanding of TBI and impact of trauma is definitely on our short list of things that we need to be more involved in. And we have kind of a committee forming to create a training specific for schools. And you know, the sooner they want us, the sooner we'll make it happen. But yeah, I think do you have connections?
yeah, a couple, you know, I'm closer to, but I think they're all reachable. And Barbara Feitis has super connections. She's a super connector also.
Yeah, so that would be a great idea. Barbara, do you have an invite that you would be willing to share? Do you want us to send you information, or do you have what you need?
No, I have what I need because I got the confirmation and then I got the personal. Yeah. So we'll
You have
send it out.
digital, right, Barbara? You have it digitally, or I can send it to you digitally.
I have it digital. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, let's work on doing that. It's always good to connect people.
Yes.
Yeah,
That would be
I'll
really
look
great.
it for. I'm looking at Debbie. Debbie, I'm going to take a screenshot of that. You look cute. Any other questions about TBRI and just the benefits of it? How long, if someone is truly interested, you know, you meet someone and younger, older, you know, someone that might have some time, what does it look like to become certified?
So there's a few different paths. So for me, I got started with the Pearl Project as a foster family. So kind of like Joy, but thankfully she came before me and had the Pearl Project here. But we became licensed as a foster family, thought we've got these really great kids. We really enjoy spending time with them. I had history of having my own history kind of involved with child welfare. And then also I've had custody of a nephew for a while. I was a guardian ad litem. I thought that we were really the perfect ones to go into this. And then you get these babies that just, they've got the 5 Bs, like all of the impact of trauma and learning how to do that. So I found the Pearl Project and did a TBRI caregiver training just as an individual foster parent. And it was an 8-week course. Well, it was 6 weeks at the time. Now it's 9 weeks, but 2 hours every week online. And then it changed everything. So you just kind of understand what happens in the brain and how the difference of they can't do the thing versus they won't do the thing. So if you're asking a child or a spouse or a coworker to do a thing and they're just not understanding, instead of saying that they just won't do it. It's just that they can't do it, and kind of having that little bit of a mind shift and learning some tools on how to do that. And Joy explained the lid flipping of the brain and how to calm my own brain so that I can share my calm with my child instead of them sharing their lid flipped with me. Kind of switching that changed everything. So I did my 6 weeks in TBRI caregiver training and got my certificate, which just is that I've gone through the training as a participant, and now I have the tools. Now I want more, which most people that go through this, sometimes it's a bit of a hard shift because we have our traditional parenting ways that have possibly worked very well in the past. They worked fine for me. They worked fine for my parents. They worked fine for the kids that were in my home before. But if you find yourself as a parent in a TBRI caregiver training, odds are what had worked in the past isn't working. And we help to make that shift. And for some people, it's easier than others. But that's why we continue to support and understand where people are coming from. So then if a person wanted to become a TBRI practitioner, which is what I ultimately did with the Pearl Project, there are 18 of us total with the Pearl Project that have been have gone through the TBRI practitioner training. That training is pretty intense, usually requires a recommendation from somebody who is somebody like Joy,
Mhm.
a recommendation from someone who knows you well, and it's an application process that for some people is years. Some people it takes years to get approved and welcomed into the practitioner training. And then the Karen Purvis Institute of Child Development out of Texas Christian University, that's where it's owned and housed from. They do the trainings in random locations throughout the year. So this one, the one that Joy's at, she is there as a mentor for new TBRI practitioners, is in Jacksonville. And then once someone does the application and gets accepted as a TBRI practitioner trainee, they go through like 40 hours of online training prep work. And then there is an adult attachment interview where you really have to kind of dig into your own history. And then you do a week-long TBRI practitioner training in person. So it's a lot to get to this place. It's all very evidence-based. There's a lot of fact to prove why this stuff works and how it works, and that it does really make an impact long term. It's changed everything. It really does.
It's such a good skill set because it really applies to all our relationships. Like you don't have to be a kid that had fetal alcohol, syndrome, or it's just how, it's almost like she said, like if somebody, honks the horn at you, or they won't smile at you at the grocery store, or they're grumpy, or it's just understanding humanity and behavior, human behavior, really.
Yeah,
So,
like just this morning, I had a guy that I pulled out into the car, and he pulled up real close behind me, and I could see that he was being aggressive. And my immediate thought, because I'm still new in my TBRI journey and making this shift in my own head, is my immediate thought is, oh, why do people have to be such jerks? And I'm feeling myself getting tense over this random guy in a car, not even near me, but I put on my lens of understanding, and I think, I don't know what this guy's dealt with this morning. I don't know what this guy's dealt with yesterday or his entire life. I don't know what happened in those first 2 little months of his life. Like Joyce said, his trauma was all very, very early, and he's had Joy and Stephen as these loving, beautiful parents ever since, but he's still going to struggle because of what he experienced in his early months. So I don't know what's happening with this guy. And then when I ask the question, what does this baby need, or what happened to you? It changes my perspective. This guy doesn't know that my mind shift has changed, but instead of me going the rest of my day frustrated over a random guy driving, now I can just have some empathy for him and just come back and feel better and just move forward with life. Yes, I can just be fine. It's not about me. One of the things that we do talk about in our TBRI trainings is a Q-tip, quit taking it personal. So when we're seeing these big behaviors, with the kiddos that we work with, it's not about me. So we have to Q-tip, quit taking it personal.
Excellent. Very
So,
nice.
Kind of looking ahead at the different things that we've got going. Joy mentioned that we have our summer camp that started last year, was our very first one. We're really excited that the TCU, the Texas Christian University, is sending their grads. They're sending 12 grad students to come volunteer with us this year. So it's going to take it to the next level. So the way it works is we have last year we had 17 campers that came. They were all foster or adopted, or a sibling of a foster adopted kiddo, or have lost their parent in some other way. 17 kids, and each of those kids gets assigned a buddy. And this buddy volunteer is trained in TBRI and stays with them all through camp to build connections. That's the basis of TBRI, is learning to form connections and teach trust. Trust-based relational intervention is about trust and connection. So we have this buddy who stays with them and just gets to know them and loves on them and supports them and helps to rewrite the negative scripts that they've been fed either by themselves or by someone else. And we spend those days rewriting those scripts, and then we work with the caregivers so that they have the same tools that we're teaching the kids, and then they can go home and they can play these games and they can add these extra bits of connection in their home. So it's really, really exciting. That's coming up again in July. We also have room for sponsors for that.
How many days? How many days is that?
It's a 3-day camp. So it's a day camp. So they come from 9 to 2. The first couple hours from 9 to 11, we're asking the caregivers to stay so that they can do some training and get some support and love also from us. But then they have 3 hours from 11 to 2 where they can just have time for themselves. You know, the kiddos are home all summer, so now they've got a few hours. They can run errands, they can go run, they can sit, they can do whatever it is that they want with their 3 hours and not have to worry about their kiddos and what's happening to them, because they know that we've got them and we will love on them and see their preciousness no matter what's happening.
I have a question. Did I hear you say that you have the siblings involved as well? Because that's really overlooked sometimes. It really takes a toll on the other kiddos in the house.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we open the camp for not only the kiddos who are in foster care or having been adopted, but also the siblings in the
Awesome.
home. So
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And then they have the same language to speak. That's really important. Cool.
well, and they also need to be loved on because it's really hard. It's really hard. I've been fostering for 2.5 years now, and I have 2 biological daughters. And in our 2.5 years, we've had 14 kids come through our house. Only 3 of them are long-term right now, but it's a lot. It's a lot for them to take on. It's a lot for them to kind of sacrifice and absorb. And it's beautiful. I think it's worth it, but they deserve
Yeah.
to be recognized for what they have
Yeah.
to work through as well.
Yeah. Very nice.
You're great. Any other questions? Debbie? Can't hear you. We still can't hear Debbie. Can you guys hear her? No, right? Debbie? No, you're still here. Let me unmute you, Debbie. Let me ask to unmute. Can I unmute you? Participants. Let me see if I can unmute her.
There you are, Debbie.
There we are.
Okay.
So I have a dear friend in New Jersey who has, I'm so sorry, I just don't feel good. She went, of course, she got her degree and then she also got her master's. And now she has gotten her degree in child development. Oops, I'm sorry. And she has started a thing over the internet for parenting, because she adopted a little girl that has caused major issues in their home. They adopted a little girl from Guatemala. And started classes where you can call in and she will help you or guide you, I should say, in parenting your child. And it just sounds incredible. And sometimes she bounces things off me, not that I can help her or anything, but hers is love, peace, joy, understanding, or something like that. And her name is Missy Burgess. And she would love to connect with the Pearl Project somehow. So is there a website or something that we could get hold of you?
Yeah, so I can, when I'm not talking, because I can't type and talk at the same time, I can put our website link in the chat, and I'll also put Joy's email address in the chat, and you can
Okay.
email Joy to try to make a connection, and that would be really great if you want to make that connection
Okay.
for her. We do have online training coming up if she wants to do TBR. I love that she is training directly toward the child. So we have our TBRI caregiver trainings that anyone can come to. We have foster adoptive families, we have professionals, we have grandparents, we have people who might want to foster one day. We have all sorts of people that come to our trainings. But then following up, we have our support group where we talk to people individually. And then we also have an opportunity for individual family coaching where a family could speak with one of the TBRI practitioners on a one-on-one basis so that we can help work through the specific issues happening in that family, which is really, really cool. It sounds like what your friend Missy is doing.
Yeah. Now she's having a hard time like getting clients.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her, I think that's her struggle. And she doesn't want me to, I'm so sorry, you guys are like looking at my boobs and my and all kinds of things. And so if I could get if you could just tell me your email, I could tell her a little bit about you and she could maybe contact you.
I think she just put it in.
Oh, I see it. Okay, Joy. Uh-oh, it went away.
And Jessica, just, at the Pearl Project. Here,
Okay. Yeah, or if you could text that to me.
I'll text it to you, Debbie.
Okay,
Manel will
Okay.
text it.
that would be great. And then I could text those to you
Mhm.
or to her, I mean.
Mhm.
That would be good. So
All right.
I'm sorry, I've been in such a fog. So, yeah, but it was very, very interesting and something that I've been trying to support her with in her endeavor. And yes, it was, thank you. Thank you for what you do. It's so important. It's so important.
Really
And
important.
yes, and was my question for the last lady. Do you think that the violence in our classrooms today, in our schools, in our wherever, 6-year-old kids, do you think oftentimes that the violence in that is this alcohol?
It could be. So the FASD, the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, it affects 1 in 5. It's an estimate, although oftentimes it goes undiagnosed because of stigma of not wanting to admit that maybe I was drinking when I was early in my pregnancy, or just not knowing. So oftentimes it goes undiagnosed or treated as something differently. So that's part of it, but also trauma in general, even without exposure to alcohol, just causes changes in the brain. It causes changes in the way that we can respond and understand the world around us. So COVID and the entire pandemic of school being shut down and everything being out of whack and parents and everyone else being stressed, that for some kids is going to internalize as a trauma. Some families probably were able to kind of overcome it and kids are able to be resilient in that. But for some kids, the impact of just the pandemic alone is a trauma and the responses from that.
And do you think a lot of parents are in denial?
Possibly, but not so much because they just don't want to see it. It's just they just don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't know, or they feel the shame for it. And that's where TBRI comes in, is we try to kind of take the shame out of it. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to, in TBRI, even on this journey, we're not going to get it right all the time. We have the tools, we know the things, but in the moment of living day to day, parenting kids from hard places is sometimes really hard, and having grace and understanding how we repair the part that we play in the parenting and kind of taking away the shame
Okay, thank
of
you.
our own experience.